Hi, my name is Robert Chelle with Chelle Law, and my law firm assists professionals with employment contract issues. Today I'm going to talk about what happens if you quit a job without notice. The first thing to identify is, did you sign an employment contract? If you haven't signed an employment contract that specifies how much notice you must provide to the employer, then ultimately it's up to you how much notice you give. Now, if you're in a non-employed position, meaning you have not signed an employment contract, then for the most part, 2 weeks notice is a fairly standard amount. Why 2 weeks? Because normally most places schedule out 2 weeks in advance. So if to, avoid a huge disruption to the schedule, they would like 2 weeks notice. Now, let's start with, you haven't signed an employment contract and there isn't anything that specifies how much notice you have to give. And then we'll end with kind of what happens if you have signed a contract. So if you're in maybe just an hourly position and you're unhappy with the job for whatever reason, there are only a few consequences that can happen for not giving notice. So one, even if you don't provide proper notice, they cannot withhold your paycheck. That's just, they can't do that. So even if you give 1 day's notice, you still need to be paid for as much as you work. Now, second, you need to think that if you are going to list this place as a resource, meaning, or a referral, or a recommendation, or whatever you want to call it, if you put it on a resume in the future, and then that place calls and just says, what were your dates of employment? And then perhaps they get someone on the phone who's a little chatty, and then they may say, well, this person did not provide any notice, so you may want to be careful. And that obviously will look poorly upon you. So you need to think, all right, if I'm not going to give enough notice, one, am I going to put this on my resume moving forward? And then two, maybe what kind of relationship do you have with whoever, manager, supervisor, whatever you want to call it? And then three, really, were there any extenuating circumstances? Because obviously an employer is going to be okay if there is an illness, a death in the family, something like that that can be explained. But if you just quit without any notice, because you're unhappy or whatever, that's a different situation. So that's the first part. Really, the only thing that can happen is they could give you a bad, and honestly, that's about it. Now, if you've signed an employment contract, it will specify exactly how much notice you have to provide. And so for most professionals, it's somewhere between 30 to 90 days notice. So in healthcare, it's longer, just so that, it's easier for continuity of care when you pass off a patient to someone else. In sales, it's usually less, around 30. So if you want to just leave your job without any notice and you've signed an employment contract, then you're in breach of contract and they could come after you for damages. Damages for the lost sales or revenue with you leaving without any notice, the recruitment costs of finding a replacement or a short-term replacement. These are all things that you could be liable for if you just, when you're determining whether to leave or not without any notice, you need to think, this could absolutely put me at risk or put me in some kind of potential liability for damages to that employer. So you have to follow what is in the contract. And it will say, all right, if you are going to give notice, this is where you send it, this is how you send it, and then in the termination letter, it does not need to be a diatribe about all the reasons why you're leaving. It just needs to say, per the agreement, I'm giving you, 60 days notice. My last day of employment will be X. Appreciate the opportunity. That's it. That's all you need to put in the termination letter. So that's a little breakdown for both people that have employment contracts and those that don't, if you leave a job without notice. If you have any questions about an employment contract, independent contractor agreement, feel free to contact my law firm at the phone number listed below in the description, or you can reach us through our website, chellelaw.com. All right, appreciate you watching the video. Thanks.